Alright then guys, welcome to the video, welcome back to the channel, and today I thought I would do a breakdown of what you're basically going to need if you want to modify and map one of these EP3s. I get quite a few questions on the channel about what things you need and all that sort of stuff, so I thought I'd try and consolidate all of that into one video, so hopefully this helps you out moving forward. Currently this car is mapped, it has all the supporting mods that it needs, but it's not running the maximum amount of power that it could be, so there will be changes happening to this as well. But basically I thought let's walk around the car and I'll run through all the bits you need. So let's start at the back and start the exhaust. Okay, so with your exhaust, obviously this is probably going to be one of the things you want to change first when you get one of these cars because they sound way better with an exhaust. If your end goal is basically max power from one of these things, I guess you do kind of have to be careful on which exhaust you go for to be able to get the most gains out of it. So for example, I've got the Spoon N1 back box, Spoon B pipe, which makes the Spoon cat back. And according to the map, that is apparently the thing that is holding me back right now. This system is considered quite small for going for max power. So the plan will be for me to change this cat back to something else with a more of like a 3-inch diameter. So a 3-inch exhaust is basically the perfect size for one of these if you're going for the power. Multiple companies make stuff for them. I know that Tegiwa and have got a collaboration exhaust that's almost 3-inch, I believe. I think that's 2.75, I could be wrong. Solid Fab seems to be the company that most people want when they're running an exhaust on these things. They're pretty hard to get because it's a small fabrication shop, but if you can find one secondhand, you can save yourself a bit of money as well. Usually only really hear good things about the Solid Fab stuff. There are other options out there as well. If you're more on a budget, I know that companies like M2 will make exhausts for this, but yeah, just remember, if you're going for that max power figure, you want to try and get as close as you can to that 3-inch size on the catback. I'm probably going to change this to a Solid Fab super silent catback exhaust because this thing's a little bit too loud now, as I've got the S2000 as well that can be the fun toy. I'm kind of looking for this thing to be a bit quieter, and the gains for being a 3-inch exhaust means that if I get a map tweak, this should do quite a bit better in power figure numbers as well. For anyone out there already running exhaust on your car, comment that down below as well, just to give anyone else options moving forward. But as we're at this end of the exhaust, we might as well talk about the other end of the exhaust, and that is the exhaust manifold. So I can't really get a good shot of the manifold, so I thought I'd just be here instead. I'm currently running a Spoon 4.2 into a 2.1 manifold. If you're going for max power, you can go for a decat exhaust system. There are actually quite a few 41 options out there. There are also some options for what is called big bore exhaust manifolds. What seems to be the case is you may lose maybe a couple of horsepower peak number, but you'll gain a couple of foot-pounds of torque here and there. So I'm not sure whether you think that's the worthy trade. So if you aren't worried about that sort of change, then any sort of normal 421 is probably going to be all right for you. The Tegiwa one seems to be very popular. I know that there are a few Japanese ones out there, and there's a Buddy Club one. I know there's a Toda one as well. Again, Solid Fab, they also make one. If you're looking more on the lower price end, Jap Speed, they have got a 41 manifold as well, and I believe there are a couple of companies that can do one where you can have a sports cat in there as well. The reason you'll want to change this is the standard exhaust manifold on the EP3 is a 4-into-1, which doesn't flow the most amount of air out of the exhaust. The 4-2-1 manifold is basically you're going 4 pipes into 2 and then into 1 into the catback exhaust basically. So that is the most efficient way of getting the gases out of the engine, because the idea is the more air you can move through the engine, the more power you can make. Those are sort of your options around that sort of area. Again, everyone leave comments down below on what exhaust manifold you're running. Please do remember that there are plenty of other options for the ones I'm just mentioning here. I'm sort of just giving you a ballpark of the things you can look for. If there are other brands out there, I know that they exist. I know that obviously Skunk 2 will make an exhaust manifold, things like that, but I'm sort of trying to give you a general overview of everything. So now that we've spoken about getting those exhaust gases out of the engine, let's go and move into the engine bay and talk about the process of getting more air in, which obviously means more power as well. Okay, so let's talk about induction kits that you can get for this car. So basically, when I bought this car, actually, one of the only modifications that came on it before I did everything to it was it had the InGen long arm intake that then sat underneath, behind the front bumper, sort of below the headlight. I think I've still got mine actually somewhere, but yeah, apparently those are quite good because obviously it's quite far away from the engine, but the only issue for me was puddles and stuff. It was just a bit close to getting water flooding into the engine that way, so I definitely wanted to change from that because of that. If you're not worried about that sort of thing, it is actually quite a good option to go for. I obviously have changed that. I've now got the Tegiwa carbon fiber induction kit. This thing sounds unbelievable. That's one of the two main reasons why I got it actually. The other reason is because it's carbon fiber. I love a bit of carbon fiber, so quite hard to turn down something that is this much carbon fiber basically. And the scoop comes out at the top here. So you may see people that have cut up scuttle panels and things. That's because to run this, you have to modify your scuttle panel, the bit that sits below your windscreen, to be able to get the scoop to pop out above. I think it looks super cool, and the sound that comes from it is amazing as well. I do believe that you can do a velocity stack style thing with a cone filter on the end, and that coupled then with doing doing maybe even a headlight duct through the headlight to get cold air with a battery relocation to get cold air into that intake, that's probably your best option for power. In terms of just your quite simple bolt-on modification side of things, I'm pretty sure this Tegiwa system is the best out there, really. I know that Mugen made an airbox that goes in the same position as here. There's other options like K&N and I guess some other brands that make induction kit where the cone sits basically right here and is right next to the engine. Those aren't the best because they get hot, and hot air into an engine means less power. So that's why I went for an enclosed system like this, because cold air comes in here, there is a cone filter in here with a drain hole on the bottom that then flows air into the inlet manifold. So that's sort of an idea of the induction kit side of it. So let's move on to the throttle body slash the inlet manifold. So as we make our way down from the inlet pipe, again, you can change this inlet pipe to a silicone hose like I've done if you want to, slightly bigger diameter to get more airflow. Not sure if that's actually been proven to make more power or not, just something that aesthetically looks a bit nicer than the plastic hose that comes with the standard airbox. So that moves into a throttle body. Now this is something I haven't actually changed. I've still got the standard throttle body. A lot of people do at this point change to a 70mm throttle body that either Tegiwa make or Skunk 2 have made one as well. I opted not to change that because the power gains you get from that for the amount that it costs, you may gain 1 horsepower here or there, but on a NA car that's not like a crazy built one, you're not really going to see much difference. And for me, the cost that it costs to buy that part for that horsepower just wasn't worth it. So I decided to leave the standard one on. Also, it means you don't get any issues with any sort of throttle sticking or anything because you're still using the OEM piece. It could be worth looking into if you're going to turbo your car, because beyond NA figures, it does actually make a difference to have a bigger throttle body. From there, we then move into the inlet manifold. There are a few options out there. There is another OEM piece that you can get from Honda, the RRC manifold, that is bigger than the standard one that comes on the car. So you'll get some gains from that if you want to stay OEM Honda. There are some other options. You can buy like an M2 inlet that's sort of based off of the Skunk 2 Pro inlet manifold. What I'm running is the Skunk 2 Ultra intake. I do have a full install video on this if you want to see how to actually install one of these things. I went for this one because Tegiwa did a full-on inlet manifold test across various inlet manifolds, and this one basically came out as the best option for horsepower per pound. Plus, in my opinion, it's probably the second best looking one that exists. If you really want to go full send and big baller, there is a PRC inlet manifold that is in full carbon. It looks unbelievable. I believe that is almost, or could be, double the price of this Skunk 2 Ultra, so that's why I've gone for this. I also wanted the black one because it went with the aesthetic of the build. This pairing with the red Mugen rocker cover, those two together are some of my favorite bits on the car. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link below to the video that Tegiwa did on the inlet manifolds, because then that will give you more of an idea of why I went for this one, but it can also help you because they actually use dyno figures and proper numbers and everything. So those are the options you have available to you. Again, you can actually still get a map with the standard one. Obviously you won't make as much power, but if you're more on a budget, that is always an option if you're not chasing those higher numbers. But from here, let's talk about the final piece of the puzzle, which is the ECU itself. So the ECU, that is obviously a pretty integral part to mapping one of these, because the standard ECU on these is not mappable without a separate board that gets soldered in. So what I am running in this car is I've got the Hondavert ECU. I got this when I was at Dyno Days. But the other options are, you've got the K100 from Hondata. You can't actually buy that new from Hondata anymore, so you'll have to find one of those secondhand. Then the other option is the Hondata K Pro. The current version is the K Pro V4. That has a Bluetooth capability so that you can connect your phone or a tablet or whatever to the ECU to get live readouts, and that is the main option sold by Hondata for this car. Those get used on cars all over the place and seem to be very popular with people. The other option as well, which is less used in this country but maybe used more elsewhere, is that Haltech have got an ECU for this now as well. Having a K100 versus a K Pro basically doesn't really make any difference in terms of the numbers you're going to make. If you're on a budget, maybe have a look at a second-hand K100 or a Hondavert like I've got in here. But what it really comes down to at the end of the day is the mapper. So there are various people and companies that you can go to around the country. I'm not going to name everyone. So this car was mapped at Dyno Days, so that is one of your options. There is also Jesse Halford from JCal. He's highly recommended by a lot of people in the Honda community, so definitely worth checking him out. You've also got Street Racers, and there's also Romain from RaceCal. He's like an OG in the game. He mainly maps GTRs and things now, but his roots were in the Honda community, so he definitely knows his way around one of these. Those are sort of the main names that get thrown around the forums and stuff on Facebook and what have you. Take your pick out of those. But those are basically all the things that you need for a basic bolt-on mapped EP3. So what I'll do now is I'll just explain an extra thing that you could do if you wanted to get slightly more power. So the final sort of thing you can do for what I guess is still considered bolt-ons, but is this last step before going pretty extreme with like building the engine with various things or changing cams more aggressive, is you could do a drop-in set of cams. Again, Tegiwa have done a test with this, and I'll leave a link to that down down below as well, basically going through all of the drop-in cams that you can buy for this engine, seeing on a graph where the gains are for each cam and all of that sort of stuff. So go check that out if you want to know more about each of those brands. But off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure there was the TDI cams, there were the Skunk 2 drop-in cams, a Drag Cartel drop-in cams. Then they also tested it against the K20A cams that come in the JDM EP3/DC5, and they have just added another one that was by Bourne as well. Those are sort of the main options for a drop-in cam in this. What is worth knowing though is that with those drop-in cams, maybe apart from the K20A cams, you will need bigger injectors. So Honda sell an RDX injector that is a 410cc injector. So that would be as far as you can take one of these engines really without sort of doing any major engine work or anything like that. In terms of if I think it's worth it, I would have to say absolutely. This car with a map compared to without a map is completely different. It is so much better. And that's with this car not even running at its max potential. So this car currently is running 220 horsepower. The spoon exhaust seems to be my limiting factor. So once I change that, I'll be able to go for more power. But even at 220, I've still gained 50 horsepower in the mid-range, which transforms this car. It is night and day difference. The throttle response is better. You'll get to 60 miles an hour in second gear if that matters to you. If you're ever wondering, like, is it actually worth it? To me, if you're into naturally aspirated cars that are like drivers' cars, it is definitely worth it. I understand obviously the numbers aren't massive, but trust me, it is so much fun to drive. If you're looking for the smiles, this will definitely give it to you. And it's basically why I love this car so much. That should be all the information that you need to move forward with mapping one of these cars. Now, I haven't listed every brand that's available for each part because this video would be way too long if I did that. So please, if you've got a mapped EP3 or just a modified EP3 in general, leave the parts that you're running down in the description below because it'll be really useful for people moving forward to have that information all in one place. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in any more Honda content. I've got loads of videos on this EP3 on there. Some more still to come as well. And I've also now got an S2000 as well if you haven't seen. Just remember to hit that subscribe button on your way down to the comment section. Remember to like this video and I'll catch you guys on the next one.